Welcome back to the Vulnerable API pen testing series. Between the last video on the series and this one, I've made quite a few changes. And in this one, we're going to be demoing sensitive data exposure. And this is something that's a lot more common than you might initially assume. And this is very applicable to mobile apps as well. This is a vulnerability that you can find in a lot of mobile apps out in the wild there, most certainly. And I'm going to show you why it arises and how we can also mitigate the vuln as well. And before I continue on here, I want to clear up a small mistake I made in the last video. I realized after the fact that my API had just had values. It was just like a list. It didn't have a key value pair like you normally see in an API. Since then, I have fixed that. So if I make a request here to this all endpoint, which is one that I added, we'll go over that in a minute here. Let me just make this larger for you guys. We can clearly see here now I've cleared that up. I have a key value pair. So before it was just showing the values here, like this value, this one, but it didn't have a key. I'll show you guys how I implemented that. So the way I did that basically was if I go into my database script, where I have the retrieve record, what I did was, I said, okay, these are what my keys are going to be. And then I iterated through all of them and had it update my dictionary with the respective key and then the actual value of that key. And then I just returned that dictionary. Now, I don't know if this is the cleanest or most Pythonic way to do it. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a developer. But this is something I kind of hacked together, and it seems to work well enough, at least for my needs right now. If anyone knows like a more Pythonic way to do it, by all means, let me know down in the comment section below. But this is what I'm kind of hacking together here. Now, okay, so on to the matter at hand here. We are going to assume that this API is using, a front end is consuming this API. Now, in this case, it'll be a simple website, but it could be a mobile app if we wanted to go down that route. So whatever it is, there's some kind of front end, and it's using the data from this API to display stuff on the screen. So a lot of this information would be considered sensitive, right? I mean, someone's name, not really. But we said this is like a unique identifier that you wouldn't want other people to know. And it has your social security number, which is obviously sensitive information. And your address, yeah, that can be sensitive information as well. You wouldn't want to disclose that to the general public in general, right? So we just have a basic web app or website, really. But we could imagine that it's a full-blown web app maybe. And it has a user page, and all it does is display all the users on the site. So you can see like who's a member of the site. I'll go ahead and demo that to you guys. And it's basically getting the data from our database, consuming our API to do this. So if I go to the site here, you can see, exactly that. User list, and then these are all the users on the system. Now, how is this actually happening under the hood? If you look here, there's no sensitive data exposure going on. But as it so happens, the way we're implementing this is not in a secured manner. So we're accessing this all endpoint here, and that's using the all class. And that class implements resource. So inherits from resource, standard enough. And it accepts a GET request. We make a GET request to this endpoint. Then it's going to call the database retrieve all function. So if we take a look at that, we have retrieve all right here. It's going to connect to the database, set up a cursor, and it's going to select everything from the accounts table and basically just populate the key value. So basically just populate everything, right? So this is the all endpoint, what it gives you, right? Obviously, in production, we're going to want to lock this down. So this should not just be, this endpoint shouldn't be accessible for all users. If it was, then, that in itself would be a vulnerability, but we're going to go a little bit further than that in this video. as it is right now, I mean, we could assume that, okay, let's say that only the site is able to hit this endpoint, make a request to it. Otherwise, you get like an unauthorized or something. Well, even still, if you're grabbing all this data, see, in the JavaScript, we're only displaying the name, right? That's all we want to do on this page. So if we look at our JavaScript, the only thing it's doing is making a call to this endpoint. And then for each element, it's just grabbing the name field and it's creating an element, just appending. So it's just looking for this name field here and grabbing the value and just appending it, right? It's writing elements to the HTML, okay? So that's how it's working, but it's actually grabbing all the data. It's just not using it. It's there. And that is how we can find this vulnerability. So if we take a look at our dev tools, what we can see is, well, we can poke around a bit. Like if we just view the source, we can't really get much from that per se. But if we look at our network tab down here, we can reload the page. And under XHR, it will show us all of the, it will show us the fetch request that was made, right, to consume this API. If we double click on that, we can actually see all of the JSON response that it had. So we can see all the information from everyone. So obviously we got some sensitive data exposure on our hands just off of that. Another way we could find this information is if we go over here and go to response, then we see it here in the response, all the data. So obviously this would be a vulnerability for us here. Now, how do we actually prevent this? And it's quite simple, really. We don't want to be exposing the sensitive data from the API. We just want to return the data that we need. So there's a few ways we could modify. Like we could create a separate query to only retrieve the name field, and instead of selecting everything from accounts, right? That's probably the cleanest solution to this. But let's just say for whatever reason, we can't do that and we need to work from the actual application itself. Well, we still need to make sure that we're implementing this on the back end. So if we chose to modify this just to get the names, you know, we could do that here as well. So either way, either after we, you know, before we get the data, which is probably ideal, or after we get the data, we can make sure we're only exposing the fields that we intend to expose. And you'll see this happen a lot on mobile apps where they will be getting a whole bunch of data from the database, some of it possibly sensitive, or, you know, at least data they don't want any user, you know, of the system to be able to see. And they're only using a certain percentage of that on the actual application, on the actual mobile app. But if you look at the XHR calls, the fetch requests and stuff being made, you can see in the JSON, there's a lot more data that is being basically leaked to the user, right? This is kind of like a data leakage type of thing. So, okay, let's just say we want to implement the fix here on the API.py script. So, or I guess we could call it a program at this point. We're a little bit beyond script, I believe. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and rename this to data. And this is basically, all of this is the data variable right now. So you see we have a list, and then we have a dictionary nested inside of there, key value pairs, right? So in this case, we only want the name. So I'll just define a key and call it name. Now, if I wanted to grab like multiple fields, like maybe name and address, then I could say something like this, right? Name, address, right? And so on, right? And I just keep adding to this list whatever fields I want to grab. But because we're only grabbing one field in this case, we'll just say key equals name. And I will initialize my dict. And again, guys, there's probably a better way to do this, but this is what I've hacked together and I've gotten to work. And, you know, I'm not a developer, but I just want to show you guys pretty quickly here how we could implement a solution on this if we needed to. But basically the core of it remains the same. We can't be exposing all these data fields. But what I'm going to do is define a result because, hey, we have a number of entries here, and so we're going to need to return a list. So this dictionary here is for the key value pair, so name and the name of the user. So now we just need to create a for loop, and we can just say for I and range length of data. And from here, we're basically going to do like you were seeing me do in the database.py file, where we can do something like a mydict.update, which is basically appending to the dictionary. And we can say the key will be key, right? Because that's the name this here, right? And then also makes it pretty simple because we just say data I, because it depends on what iteration it is through the loop as for which name field we grab, this one versus this one versus this one, right? And the key once again, right? Because data, remember, data is everything. I equals, for example, I equals 0 will be the first entry, and then the key name, I'll grab this value here. So that is why we write it in that way. And then after we do that, what we want to do is we want to append to our result list the dictionary. And we're going to need one more step, but I'll run it like this just so you guys can see what happens if we don't add that step, okay? So let's just do this and return this result. You'll see what the ramifications of this is. I'm going to need to, every time you make changes to this, you got to update, you got to rerun this. So let's do that. If I do it like that, you see the last one got written every single time for all 6 of the entries, right? And so the way you fix that is you actually have to be clearing out your mydict each time. So you just reinitialize it here. And what you'll see, so you do that, I guess I could have ran it through here either way. But yeah, once you do that, you'll see that it populates correctly. So yeah, in this case, right, let's go back here. Let's see if we can find all the sensitive data, and we can't, right? All we see is the names because we're no longer exposing the sensitive data fields. And even if we directly hit this through Postman or curl or anything like that, this is all we'll have access to. So this is now secured from the sensitive data exposure vulnerability. So yeah, let me know if there's any questions in the comments section below, and hopefully that cleared it up for you. And yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button as well. And yeah, if you guys want to catch up on this series, I will provide the videos on screen now. I'll see you guys right over there. Thanks for watching.